session will focus on education. We're going to begin with Tamara Zúñiga-Brown. I've communicated with Tamara many times, and it's been a pleasure to meet her for the first time at this event. And I'm so glad she made the trip up from San Diego to be with us and to be with her mom and dad. Just a wonderful family, the Zúñiga-Brown family. I'm very happy to have met them finally. And Tamara is an English as a second language teacher, and she'll be telling us about what she does and the challenges and other aspects.
Awareness raising.
Yeah. Okay. So here's Tamara.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you. I am, as John said, an English as a second language instructor. I teach at 2 universities in Southern California. I have a master's degree in second language acquisition, and I've worked with international students, that's my profession, for the past 5.5 years, almost 6 years. And I predominantly teach Saudi Arabian students and Chinese students. I have gotten to know them very well. They've gotten to know me very well. As I say, in the world of ESL, no one in the United States, or possibly anywhere necessarily, has so many contact hours with international students, sometimes 20 to 30 hours a week. So we get to know them very well. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that I will be interjecting, and I will be happy to field or entertain any questions as well, because from our presentations over the last couple of days, there's so much connectivity that to me, it's, from my perspective, I see possible, perhaps, potential solutions to some of the issues and challenges that we have been fielding. So I will present my research as best as to the best of my ability, and hope that the message that is sent will be multiple messages. So the theme of the conference is hegemony, and as I see it, my students are the future. They are a key group of future global stakeholders. We are at the complete opposite end of the ESL spectrum with our previous presentation with Evelyn, because we are in higher education. There are a couple of acronyms as we look at the PowerPoint slides that I will elucidate you better on. So, higher education and English language, keyword gateway programs. These are not international students that have already been admitted into university. They are a different group, believe it or not, different protection, different departments. We fall completely differently, and I will explain that as I continue. So pardon a lot of the facts that I'm giving. Well, I shouldn't say pardon the facts, pardon the writing. Please don't pardon the facts. It's taken me a very long time to research the facts.
They get in the way.
Well, it's actually very difficult to find research on ESL gateway programs. So for a quick American snapshot, what I'm apologizing for is all the writing, okay? And I've tried to bring in as much information that would address as many different demographics that are represented here in interests. So we are educating, as I said, a key group of future global stakeholders. In 2003, okay, there were over 900,000 international students from more than 200 countries that contribute more than $27 billion to the United States economy, citing my sources, of course. In 2015, Department of Homeland Security came up with new figures at 1.13 million students, huge increase. From the Brookings Research Institute, I found some very interesting statistics also. Our degree-seeking IHE is higher institutions of higher education. That's what that acronym means. So the most significant growth occurred with many foreign students, and of course they are pursuing English language training programs. There's no way, we all understand, that they can be admitted into an American institution of higher learning until they are academically prepared, which is what an ESL program does. A fascinating, interesting note on that is that we are not considered academic programs. Per the hierarchy of the vast majority of institutions of higher learning. I will explain that later. We fall under continuing education or extension courses. So I, for example, teach academic reading, academic writing, anywhere from level 1 through Fulbright graduate students. But we are not considered academic. Keep that in mind, please. TOEFL is rather similar to SAT, GREs, the standardized tests that university students, international students need to pass in order to gain the admittance to American institutions of higher learning. Interesting fact, I didn't know what states people would hail from necessarily, so they're concentrated in these 5 different metropolitan areas. Top hometowns, these are just some good facts of foreign students, respectively, of course, well, not of course, but Riyadh, Jeddah, Beijing, Hyderabad, and Beijing. I put Beijing twice. They must be very represented. Another interesting fact, of course, home is Nevada, northern Nevada, Reno. But an interesting fact is that UNLV is home of 94%. Studying for a BMD means a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a PhD. Business. And of course, foreign students, I think many of us may realize this, disproportionately study the STEMs. And I think Evelyn mentioned STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math. 45% of the graduates extend their visas to work, and they tend to stay in the same metropolitan areas. There's some discrepancy in the facts, the figures. This I thought would be interesting for all of us to see as a good overview. The top 3 states that have the international students are California, New York, and Texas. UCLA, of course, New York, and then they broke it down specifically, generating a vast percentage of that $27 billion. Also out of interest, and my students always say, well, you know, I have a cousin in Canada, a cousin in Australia. Well, what made you came to America? Well, my brothers and sisters were here. It's usually the answer I get. So overall, Australia, and you can see from the chart, the annual cost is much higher there. We have the United States, the UK, and Canada are English-speaking countries. Last year, in July of 2014, NAFSA, which is a group basically focused on international students, they generate data, collect, it's also an online informative group as to where the international students are going, what are the challenges, anything from daily academics to recruitment of students. NASA reported that the U.S. lost 10% of the international student business. It is a business model in July of 2014. And the source traces it back to Canada because they're not, the tuition is not as high as it is in the United States. Now, there are 2 historically unprecedented events, and they are completely historical. The first is the King Abdullah Scholarship Program that began in 2005, is projected to go until 2025, but in the past, when King Abdullah, may he rest in peace, passed away, King Salman now has different, and I'm not going to pretend to speak for the government at all, I will give my facts and my figures there, but the price of oil has a lot to do with the availability of funds, which is where it absolutely ties in, and I will just leave that one at that. I only went back to as far as 2011, where the CASP, meaning the King Abdullah Scholarship Program, which is, by the way, for the first think tank ever in Riyadh, and the Innovative Government is the name of the website, is the largest human capital development initiatives in history. So in 2011, it was awarded $45 billion scholarship, and by 2015, we now have over 150,000 Saudi students in higher education in the United States, in 23 countries, and 110,000 of those are in the United States. When I say Saudi students, many of you probably realize it's not just the students themselves that come. The women usually have to come with a mahram, or more like a chaperone role. So they will come with either their father for a bit, or they will stay with a brother, or they will have a male cousin, they will have a male companion. Now, I will get into socio-cultural shifting norms when it comes to that in the American classroom from my experience as well. But right now we're getting through our facts. So the cost per student approximately is about $266,000. Now, this 2015 budget that was increased to $59.7 billion in education and training by the Department of the Council of Ministers does not only include, we do the math, not just the United States. They are building infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. That's what one of the objectives is for the King Abdullah Scholarship Program, which I will continue to give you more information on. Coverage of the scholarship, 2 years. 18 months is what it's boiled down to either get their bachelor's degree, their master's degree, or their doctoral degree. They do receive full tuition, it's a scholarship. They also receive a monthly salary of about $1,800. They also receive health insurance and social benefits. We will talk about social benefits in a bit. And they get to travel home to KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia once a year. Now, per the Ministry of Education, they do encourage STEM majors, and of course business administration, medical and natural science, engineering, and law. I have 3 women now former students who are studying they're studying law and engineering, and I will continue with the next slide because I get all excited about this topic and wind up with so much information. This is just a quick chart to see the growth of Saudi enrollment, where it was in 2000. Basically, it originated with President Bush after 9/11 to try to encourage bonds of understanding and peace between Saudi Arabian and Americans. So that's how the projected budget has increased. Objectives. First objective, soft power, like that. Better relationships post 9/11. A new diplomacy. Major point. Students tell me this all the time. Building infrastructure. Building infrastructure with human capital. Educate the youth. Educate the youth. There's a dearth of skilled workers in Saudi Arabia. And they are offering the Saudis, of course, a world-class education in STEM and business, public administration, tourism, IT. Another goal, objective of the CASP, is to mitigate the high unemployment or underemployment. 50% of Saudis are under the age of 25. Your figures for unemployment of all ages, levels of education, 5.4, ages 20 to 29, extremely high, 27%. I focus on women's issues a lot. 30% of women are unemployed. And of that 30%, 78% are job seeking. They have university degrees. Of course, another objective is to forge bonds of loyalty between the citizenry, I should say, and the students and the government by offering them these opportunities. Some measurable outcomes, longitudinal data was developed by SACM, which is the Saudi Arabian Cultural Ministry. And this is what they budget specifically for the program, which is $2.4 billion. And a new electronic data platform was generated after many years of basic bottlenecking. So the SACM is based in Washington, D.C., and the students are all over the United States. And the advisors are few and far between because the program grew so incredibly quickly. And there were a lot of bottlenecks. So they developed this electronic data platform to collect. And of course, most importantly, which I think will be fascinating in a few years once the scholarship program comes to an end, perhaps, or maybe dwindles down, is that it's tracking the student progress, and their percentage of students who have completed degrees, because they're not all able to for multiple reasons. And of course, very important, adherence to academic standards, and it does connect the students with their cultural mission. Gender roles, women. The first year I taught, the first semester, they were all young Saudi men between the ages of 20 to about 25, and maybe a handful of Chinese students. Very interesting demographics. By the third semester, I had some women in the class, 1 or 2, wearing hijab. A few semesters later, I have Saudi women wearing hijabs, some not, perhaps, and with the men in the same classroom. huge shift in cultural roles, gender roles, because the society, as we know, is very much separated. So for the women, as we said, there's roughly about 23% of the scholarship recipients are women. And of course, they generate vital access, potential contributions, amazing. And they're gaining all the skills that is helping to build the infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. And also, as I mentioned earlier, it is generating very deep and lasting effects, not just within social development in the United States, but when they go back to the kingdom. There are shifting norms. All right. This is the only study I was able to find, and this is one of the points that I think we need to address as institutions of higher learning, which are the perceptions. And we've had this discussion many times with many of the different topics that we have touched upon here, which is, what is the perception? What is it, what perspective is it that they are seeing that we are seeing? How is it impacting? So I do not necessarily want to read all of that to you, but I did have to quote it because there's only one study that I was able to find. And they love being in America. They absolutely love the ability of the freedom of being able to shop. I'm going to speak from my students' perspective right now. They love being active participants of society, of where they're living. But what my students have told me over the years, and I have had reinforced a couple of times, and with this study as well, is that they don't get to interact with Americans as much as they'd like to. My students joke about learning more about Saudi Arabia than they do when they're home. So my students from Jeddah learn more about the students from Riyadh, the students from Riyadh learn more about the students from Jeddah. And I will come into what I believe and what research has shown me where perhaps that disconnect is coming from. So, I forgot China. How could I possibly forget China? That's our second demographic. This is a very, very, very quick sketch. There are over 285,000 Chinese, and of course, I don't think I need to explain this very well to this room because you are very, very well versed on China. But I thought it was interesting to pull up the enrollment where they are predominantly found. First, of course, Purdue, University of Illinois, Michigan State, there you go, and USC and Ohio State. And most popular degrees also seeking business, engineering, and social sciences. Quick on China. Now, this is where a lot of the conflict, the challenges are coming from. February 25th. This is a map of international adjunct faculty walkout day. I'm not sure how many of you were aware of this. Did anybody know that this movement actually took place?
Of course we all did. We talked about it on WAIS. Tamara wrote a piece.
I wrote a short piece, and the point why I'm explaining this, and of course, as you know, I'm at an institution of higher learning, but I am not considered an adjunct. Those of us in the world of ESL are considered lecturers or part-time instructors. We need to have a master's degree or a PhD at a university, but we are not considered adjunct. So, as this movement took on a national strength, it all began with the unfortunate death of a French adjunct from Duquesne University who died homeless on the street. Because as adjuncts, usually you are no job protection. You get hired and fired at the beginning of every semester. You are allotted a certain amount of, for us it's hourly wages, not predominantly. But this is just, I will continue with the next slide to give you more information. This is just a picture of what the adjuncts are doing and the voices of ESL instructors who are teaching academically but not recognized as academic preparation for international students to gain admittance, I should say, into universities. Our voices they're here right now. So I really thank you for listening. So the crisis in America. As I mentioned before, the French adjunct sadly died homeless on the street. And it raised a ruckus, basically, to the point that Congress wrote a report in January of 2014. And I was grateful because I'd been trying to do some research myself and couldn't find any stats or statistics as to what's going on here. How is it that we are only living below the poverty line, as you can see there, and the median salary is only $22,000 for adjuncts? Okay, if you want to skip down here, instructors, ESL instructors make half to even less of what an adjunct who's already living in poverty makes. Do you have a question? Or you're probably just stretching. Okay, sorry. All right. Then that was on January 2014. This year, I found a report from UC Berkeley. I think this is what I published in one of our WAIS discussions as well, which is part-time faculty are officially have been placed in the category of low-wage occupational public assistants. We are right there with fast food workers, child care providers, and home care workers. Always comes down to taxes. Tax to the paying public, you can see for yourself, and assistance for families of part-time faculty, even more. ESL instructors, we don't have any facts for us, any statistics. I would encourage it greatly. And I will continue to say again, because we are the front lines. I think I might have it in the next one. Yes, okay. So we are the front lines of the linguistic and acculturation process. As one of my students said, they were very aware of Faculty Walkout Day because none of us were there, and they asked us what happened. And we said, well, it's American, it's a democracy, and we have a voice, and we are grateful for it. And two students asked why. I gave them some information when one asked. But they're the one, my student said, but teacher, how do you think we're going to get into universities if you don't teach us? I said, how long did that take you to figure out? So it was kind of a very interesting moment. This is a hierarchy. The congressional report also found that over the past, since the late 70s, as faculty retired, tenured faculty retired, part-timers were hired on. It used to be most faculty and most universities 75% full-time and 25% part-time. But over the past 30, 40 years, the shift has been occurring. So that's why 75% of, as one article said, the indentured servitude of academia, this is where they exist at the point. ESL, as I've mentioned a few times, come under the umbrella of continuing education and extension. Continuing education extension is traditionally for professionals. For example, let's say a realtor or a lawyer, not to pick on anybody, who comes in and teaches a class at night because they love teaching, they want the experience, but they are not necessarily, I do not mean to offend anyone, professional pedagogues, educators, master's degree or PhDs in education. So what has happened is, of course, it has turned into, and this is, let me back up a little bit, TESOL, and the acronyms up there, there are 3 advocacy groups for the world of ESL. They've been around since the 60s. I actually contacted directly and asked if they had any facts or figures, demographics, and not yet. So I've been doing a lot of the research on my own. But in their 2010 page, you can look this up on the website, it's basically warning institutions of higher learning to please just be careful and don't use continuing education as ways of scrutinizing costs. And that's what the congressional report also focused on. And as I said earlier, the average pay of ESL instructors, not all, but the vast majority, I can't find those numbers, our advocacy groups haven't generated them yet, but from doing plenty of job applications, it's basically about half, and it's hourly. As I said, hourly, anywhere from $19 an hour to about $75 is an absolute super high hourly rate. Now, those of us who are educators here, and even those who are not, know very well that an instructor does not only, or a professor does not only teach in the class. It is hours and hours of preparation, of research, of grading, of writing letters of recommendation, of helping students outside the class, and none of that is compensated, which is why the adjunct faculty walkout day occurred, but the voice of ESL instructors are not yet there, has not yet been there. So I, of course, love people. Come by it honestly, international, living overseas my whole life, and so I've been analyzing this as a very much political economic amateur analyst. My profession is as an educator. And I said, you know what? I'm going to call us social cultural engineers. We are cultural engineers in the ESL classroom. I said, we are the gateway program. We are what prepare these students for admittance to university. And first impressions count, absolutely count. I call us the front lines of the linguistic and acculturation process. We don't just teach grammar and reading and writing. There's so much culture involved. I have been able to voluntarily spearhead interfaith dialogues. I have so many Muslim students in my classes. I was able to talk our parish priests into having interfaith dialogues with our students. So Islam and Christianity, there could be more methods for us to understand each other. They're very interested. It makes them learn the vocabulary. They get their sentence structure right. They formulate their questions. It's a wonderful way. I have self-defense classes for the Saudi women. I take all my students to the rodeo in April. Do you have any idea how much fun that is? They learn their prize bull riding rules. I've never seen, they'll say howdy that first week that we're learning. It's unbelievably wonderful opportunity to build those bridges of cultural and social understanding. And of course for the Saudis and for us too, and this comes from the Rafiq Hariri Middle East Center, who I've been very blessed to dialogue with him after I responded to an article in U.S. News and World Report about what can Saudi Arabia, what can Americans do better to welcome Saudi students. And I said, yes, we can do better. So it is a strategic opportunity for dialogue, absolutely. And we're helping the Saudis engage in internal cultural exchange and external. And then on the other hand, the ambassador, Richard LeBaron, who wrote the article, and Stephanie Hashir, generated these questions, which are so very relevant for today. You can read them. Attitudes, perceptions. What is going to happen? What is the attitude? What are the perceptions that we are leaving and generating with these students? It's all about resource allocation, and the resource allocation is not necessarily being trickled down to the ESL classroom. Of course, then I say debate and reality, the brain circulation, but we are educating a cadre of international graduates. They are the key group of future global stakeholders. And of course, we had our immigration discussion that absolutely falls into that. On the other hand, dichotomy, we have our American students who are now graduating. We have a $1.2 trillion outstanding student debt, and on average, $29,000 per student. And we are in America changing our own social cultural norms. Almost done, John.
Okay. Yeah.
Almost done. This, I think, we can probably surmise with this. Come up to some sort of a conclusion in a way. Admonishments: be careful. Don't use your part-timers. Put your best foot forward. Present what you can in the best way possible. Sometimes we don't have classrooms for the students, and we have to teach them in other places that aren't a traditional classroom. And it's rather interesting to try to explain to them why that has happened. Very shocking. They don't understand how this can happen. So we're the soft power ambassadors trying to assuage that situation. And of course, the admonishments, higher education. I have said before, from my personal humble perspective, a seismic paradigmatic shift needs to occur. And I know America can do it. USC has developed a toolkit that Dr. Adriana Kazar has gone to over 800 universities, institutions of higher learning. She has studied and researched and come up with the whole toolkit that anybody can access. And it's a plan to try and get together. It is not a perfect solution, I'm sure. It is extremely complex. It has occurred over many years. I believe everybody's heart's in the right place. I think it's literally just a matter of education and raising awareness. But I can tell you that the students are very informal poll over 5 years of knowing them for so many years. They love America very much, but they're extremely surprised at the practices and at the ESL level. I have to make that very clear. At the resource or lack thereof necessarily of resource allocation that are given to the programs. So with that, I can leave. I absolutely love what I do, and it fills my heart, and I'm grateful for what I have, but I do think it's time for us to be able to make some sort of a change. Yes.
Yes. Paul was the first with his hand up.
Okay.
Paul Pitlick.
We talked about how the students don't get more Americans. I have the sense of Americans don't understand their team. It seems like there's an opportunity to get people together.
There's a fantastic opportunity. The opportunities are incredible because, as I said earlier, the students, the program that has the best opportunity, the maximum amount of hours with the students are ESL gateway programs. Once they get into university, they're in different majors and different classrooms. The teachers see them maybe for 1 or 2 classes, but we get to know them very well through intensive 10-week program, 14-week programs. We know them very well. I have actually encouraged strongly, but I've done this all on a volunteer basis, and I've had to let go of a lot of things, unfortunately, so I could pay my rent, to be perfectly honest with you. So I have organized another program, which is to get our Americans learning our critical languages, the Americans on campuses learning Arabic, learning Chinese, learning critical languages, together with my students who would love to practice their English with them, and the American students who would love to practice their critical language learning skills with native speakers who are their age, who they would get to know each other so well. So at the same time, you're thinking, well, that would take in more administration, and we keep those costs keep blossoming out of control. But there is a way of doing it, and as bleak as it sounds sometimes, I like to quote from Alexis de Tocqueville, who said that the greatness of America lies not in her ability to be better than anyone else, but in her ability to repair her faults. And that is such an incredible American strength. So there are a million opportunities. I'm trying to start, I actually put in a proposal to the Dean of Peace and Justice with women program. The Saudi women, my goodness, I could probably gather a good 200 easily. They are the #1 hyper-connected tweeters in the world. Those kids are hyper-connected. And it's like, Tam says this, boom, they're there. It's great. It's fantastic because I've had the opportunity and the blessing to get to know them because I'm their ESL teacher. So yes, I have a million ideas I have, absolutely. Other questions?
Definitely on the front lines of American soft power. Nothing. We had Francisco, then Seth, who's in your field.
Yes.
You have spoken
Couple
with Seth.
conversations. Yes,
Yeah.
Francisco, yes.
A couple of things. I would like to see a slide where the reversal from 75 to 25 to 25 to 25 also includes salary. I mean,
Could you repeat the question?
yeah, it would different way. We have fewer full-timers and more part-timers. The idea of having more part-timers is to save money supposedly, because you have to get a benefit at this time. And the full-timers are fewer. But because of many colleges, tuition fees, everything keeps going up. Okay. So is that where the money is going, you're not making it savings rate. So it would be nice to have a slide comparing that. Where is the money going when we do that shift from 75 to 25? And secondly, the concept of coding people. For example, I think that in some colleges or universities, what you do is called immediate education. And then put you there, and that's you're going a different salary category. At the same time, they justify the shift from 75 to 25 by saying, well, that part-timer doesn't need to teach because he has a full-time job elsewhere. I will give him 6 hours, and he doesn't really need benefit because he gets benefit in the other job. And that's why you now have professional part-timers. People have 2, 3, 4 jobs, and they're traveling all over the place to feed their family. So that's the main problem in higher education, not at the elementary level. In higher education, that's a big problem.
That is correct. And
finally,
yeah.
You're working mostly on soft money projects. So you have to participate in the drafting of the proposal, right?
For myself?
Yeah, well, this is how the program, soft money program.
Yes.
Financially,
That is correct. That is correct. But yeah, that's correct. As I said, it's the largest human capital venture in the history. It's never happened. It's unprecedented. China and Saudi Arabia, and the number of international students from China and Saudi Arabia in American ESL classrooms. They're all over, but the one place where they're absolutely concentrated is here. So I've been trying to get, as a group called the HERA Hub, that is particularly focused on empowerment of women in business, and they would mentor them. And that to me could be, I've tried it, but I keep doing this all on a volunteer basis and thinking, I got to work my third part-time job. Because, so the ideas are there, the possibilities are immense as far as I'm concerned from my perspective. I think we had
Seth.
Yeah, yes. Seth, and then, Yes, Seth.
Well, thank you very much for a very enlightening and I think very, very important overview of what's going on. And I think it might, for people who haven't been around the contemporary institution of higher education for a while, it might help to kind of, it follows from Francisco's question. There are all kinds of different situations, and there are full-time people. There could be combinations for somebody maybe who's part-time and kind of calculated by an hourly wage, but they happen to have benefits in certain institutions, or temporary part-time, temporary full-time, knowing that it's a limited type of thing. So there's all kinds of different combinations.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's for the world of adjuncts. I'm particularly focused on ESL.
Yeah, and even within ESL. Then,
yes, there are within ESL, few and far between, which was my question to the advocacy groups. Could you give me some sort of percentages? I know from January 1st when the ACA came into full effect, our ACA person, it impacted different schools differently. It was based on the interpretation of each department or each university as to how they would allow you to work certain hours or not. Yeah. And that's still up for grabs. We're literally in very murky waters, and I'm not about to pretend to be a lawyer to try and figure out that one, because I think even at each respective university that it's up to complete interpretation. Some of the community colleges have to be a little more transparent and accountable because they have more federal funds, as opposed to perhaps a private university that functions differently. So is it complex? Yeah. Absolutely. I'm just presenting what I know, the facts and figures I've been able to research from my time.
That's very important.
Thank you very much. There needs to be more. There needs to be more, completely, because it is impacting the impact globally, as you can all see, is unbelievable. I mean, just from a religious perspective for my students. Yeah.
We have Evelyn.
Are you teaching the students in a community college setting, or is it a university setting? What's the setting like? And then my other question real quickly is, are they planning to go back to Saudi Arabia and use whatever knowledge and skill they've acquired, or are they planning to stay here?
It all has to do with the visas and with immigration. Their plans, informally to me, they want to stay here. They've gotten their degrees. They would like to practice. They would like to connect with American businesses, with American scientists, with the law program, whatever is that they are studying. They would like to stay for at least a year, but they want to go back. They're building infrastructure. Yeah, the Chinese are a different story. Yeah.
Okay, Ed will be the final question.
Yes. The WAIS programs that you talked about are, of course, tremendous expansion. The WAIS have been sending students to the country for many, many years. I had a Saudi woman working for me at the New Institute Library in 2001. And just after September 11th, she disappeared. I never saw her again, nor did I see any others from the campus. Two other comments. I was once in the office of Prince Salman when he was still the governor of Riyadh for a meeting with a group of other people. And as I sat there and looked around in the office, I just suddenly thought to myself, my entire house can fit in this room.
Wow.
The third thing is your statistics on Chinese students. I was struck by the fact that Purdue has the most Chinese students. And I'm thinking of all of those Chinese thinking of themselves as boiler making. Mind-boggling.
They absolutely,
a lot of Spartans too.
Absolutely, and I think we've talked about forming identities in the university. My students are forming their identities, their perceptions of how Americans are welcoming them. What are we doing? And I know we can do so much. I know we can do an incredible job. It's just a matter of, as I said before, of raising awareness and of knowing, what the challenges are. because it's just a challenge. We all have to face them, right? It's a matter of how we deal with them. And as I said, the students were very shocked after National Faculty Adjunct Walkout Day, and they said, "What's going on in America?" They said, "We're trying to figure it out too." But that's the beauty of a democracy, and we're doing it together, and that's why I can do it. As a matter of fact, I mentioned the rodeo because the week of the Boston bombing was our rodeo week. Fate had it that way. And at that time, I had many classes, and I had a high academic vocabulary level. And they were very concerned. I'd been preaching about democratic values and about being able to, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And they said, "But teacher, is it okay if we go to the rodeo?" I said, "Are you kidding me? Teacher, you're going to go with us, please?" I said, "Of course I will be there with you." I was actually published in the front of the World Tribune because I'd be happy to share the link with you, an article about how my Saudi Arabian students, being Muslim post 9/11, actually reacted. And I'll tell you, the first thing they did, they ran down the door in my classroom and said, "Tam." I'm like, "What's wrong? Ishvik, what's wrong?" And so I ran with them, and they said, "Look, it was a Saudi." I'm like, "A Saudi what?" And they said, "It was a Saudi." And then they were praying, "Please don't let it be Saudi. Please don't let it be Saudi." And I said, "You guys, you want to learn an idiom? Don't jump to conclusions." So as far as I'm concerned, there's always a teaching moment everywhere. And it's an amazing advantage, I will say. Maybe it's not an economic advantage, get it, but I'm still doing it, and I love what I do, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can, which is why I'm standing here talking to everybody. But I absolutely believe, I've told some of you before, I love Les Vygotsky, who's a constructivist, and we can do this together. That's what makes America great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tamara.
You're welcome.
You really reinvigorated me as an educator. I'm ready to go back next week. Do it.